everybody, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for 50,000 subscribers. When I first started this YouTube channel, I don't think I ever really thought it would get to this point, so I'm just really grateful. If you've been following my work for years or you're brand new here, I really appreciate that you're here and you're listening, and I'm looking forward to all of the music to come. To celebrate, I thought it would be really fun to do a Q&A because I haven't actually done one of those since I hit 1,000 subscribers many years ago. So the plan was to do a live stream and then edit that live stream into a sort of highlight video, but I kind of messed up the recording of the live stream and then I couldn't download it later, so I'm kind of refilming the responses to some of the questions that you submitted on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and my email list in this video. If you don't hear the answer to your question in this video, or you just want to check out the full live stream, there is a link for that in the description, so check down there. I've divided the questions into different categories, and the first one is going to be FAQ, questions that I get all the time. First question is, how long have you been playing the harp? I started playing harp at the end of 2008, just after I turned 15, so in 2020 it's been about 12 years. How did you get started with music? I started with music when I was in kindergarten with piano lessons, and I actually took lessons for 13 years up till the end of high school. And I also played flute and saxophone in junior high and high school. So then a lot of people ask, what motivated you to play the harp, or how did you choose that instrument? And what actually happened was, when I was growing up, I always needed to have some kind of plan of what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I picked all sorts of careers that I thought I would like and then discarded, and as I was heading into high school, I kept thinking I would be so sad if I didn't play music anymore, and I couldn't really imagine my life without music. So I kind of thought about the career options that awaited me from piano, flute, or saxophone, and I didn't really want to be just a piano teacher. I didn't want to be a band teacher. That's a really hard job, so respect to all the band teachers out there. I didn't think I was really good enough to be a performing pianist, so I don't really know where the idea of the harp came from first, but I sort of thought, you know what, playing harp would make a great career. I can play solo at weddings or in restaurants, I could go play in a cruise ship, I can still play with ensembles, and so without ever having touched a harp in my life, I was like, yep, that's what I'm gonna study at university and that's gonna be my career. So it's kind of a bold move, but clearly it's paid off. Were you a classically trained harpist? Yes, I have a bachelor degree of music from the University of British Columbia. So what I ended up doing in high school, I was 15, I took harp lessons for 3 years. I was actually quite bad for the first 2, and then somehow it all sort of clicked in the 3rd year, got into university, studied there for 4 years, and since then I've been a professional harpist. So then a lot of people ask, what motivated you to start this YouTube channel? So when I was in my first year of university, I loved to go on YouTube and search for harp covers of Zelda songs, and after a while I realized no one had done Gerudo Valley. And I thought, well, hey, I could do that. I bet I could do a really good job of making Zelda covers. And so in the summer after my first year of school, I made Gerudo Valley, I made some other Zelda covers, and the rest is history. I also got some questions of why do I choose to play video game music, or do I prefer playing classical music or video game music? And the answer is I prefer playing video game music. I love video game music. It makes me so happy to play and arrange it. So that's why I've chosen this for my career path ultimately. The things that most inspire me are stories and characters and settings and atmospheres and that sort of thing, and I think that soundtrack music and video game soundtracks in particular are so special in the way that they can totally make an area feel a certain way, and the way that the music can perfectly describe what a character is thinking and feeling in a particular moment in the story without using any words at all. Something I decided a little while ago was that my purpose, my why of why I make music is to find joy for myself and also to share that with other people. And what I realized was that playing classical music, I like classical music, but I'm not in love with it, and it doesn't make me feel joy the same way that video game music does. So that's why I'm playing this kind of music. Another question people ask me all the time is, what harp is that in this particular video? Over the years, I have used a Venus Model 75, which is also my first harp that I started learning on. an Aoyama Etude 46 and 47, which I rented while I was in school. I also have a Dusty Strings Ravenna 26, my Line and Healy Style 23, which is the one that I do all my recording on now. I also have a Heartland Harps Legend, which I absolutely love. And I do also have a couple of harpsicles, which have appeared in one video, but I've never actually recorded on them. And then of course, there's the question that I get possibly multiple times a week sometimes. How do you record your harp, or what equipment do you use? So I'm not gonna get terribly into detail here because it's like a whole topic, and I do want to make a video on this topic very soon, hopefully within the next couple of months. But just to give a short answer right now, I use two Rode M3 small diaphragm condenser microphones in stereo, and to film I have a Canon Rebel T6. So next up, we've got some questions about my process. So a lot of people asked, how do I pick which songs I cover? So first of all, it's gotta be something that I really like. If it's a song that doesn't really resonate with me, I find it really hard to make an arrangement for it. I'll also try to pick at least a couple times a year some songs that both I like and are also kind of related to something relevant going on. So if there's a game release coming out, then I might try to do something from that franchise. How do you start arranging songs? So I always start by listening to the song a lot and then sort of just imagining what I'd like it to sound like, seeing if I can kind of hear it as a harp arrangement in my head before I even start. Sort of think about what range I might like the melody to be in, what kind of accompaniment patterns I might like to use, and sort of an overall like narrative for the arrangement, because I like my arrangements to kind of start a bit slower and then build and then maybe trail off, or it depends on the song. Sometimes it might start big or end big or whatever, but I like to have an idea of the overall kind of progression. Then I'll sit down and start writing out some of my ideas. I might play the harp at the same time while I'm doing that. And then once I've got a whole first draft written out, I'll take that to the harp and start learning it. And then I'll kind of discover there things that maybe didn't work that I thought would, and make some changes as I'm learning it. And then I'll go back and put those final edits into the final draft. If you'd like to know more about my arranging process, I do actually post videos of myself working on arrangements on my Patreon page, so there's links for that in the description. Now I've got some questions about past videos that I've made. Which cover viewers do you wish had more recognition? I try not to expect anything from sort of YouTube numbers or anything like that, because the algorithm is very indifferent to what we think it should do. But I remember a few years ago I did a cover of Praying by Kesha that I thought was amazing, and I thought people would find it a bit more, but they didn't, and it makes sense why, looking back. And then there's a few of the Undertale covers that I did, like Megalovania, Waterfall, and Memory. I kind of was hoping that those would do a little bit better because the Undertale medley was doing really well. They're still some of the most viewed videos on my channel, but I kind of hoped that they would grow my channel a little bit more than they did. But that's okay. And then I have two questions that have the same answer. So we've got, which video was the hardest to make, and what was one of your favorite covers to learn or create a video for? And so these both have the same answer. And it's Sound of the Wind, or Morning Sky, from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which I just put out this summer. It was a really huge project for me. I'm not really used to working with so many instruments, and so creating the mix and the arrangement too was quite a challenge for me. But I also, it's a song that I've loved for years. It's one of my favorite video game tracks ever, and it's a song that I had really wanted to cover basically since I started my channel. So I'm really, really proud of how it turned out, and that I was finally able to cover it. Next up, we've got a whole bunch of favorites questions. First is, who is your favorite composer? So I'll split this one into classical composers and video game composers. My favorite classical composer, I think, would have to be Tchaikovsky. I really love his ballets, like Swan Lake is one of my favorite orchestral works. And for video game music, I think I would have to say Koji Kondo, just because Zelda has had such a huge impact on my life. And if you've been on my channel for quite a while, you'll know that I really got my start by making a lot of Zelda covers. Who are your favorite harpists? Who is Paganini of the 21st century? So some of my favorite harpists to listen to are Anneline Lenertz, I'm assuming I said her name wrong, Xavier de Maistre, and then my favorite Celtic harpist is Arya Frankfurter. As far as who's the harp Paganini of 21st century, I would have to say probably Alexander Boldachev. Probably. What's your favorite color? Purple. Is there any particular game or show or movie that you're obsessed with at the moment? Fire Emblem. I love Fire Emblem Three Houses so much. I'm obsessed. Besides video game music, TV, movies, pop culture, what other musical genres interest you or would you like to play? So I listen to a lot of music outside of just soundtracks, but I would say I really do enjoy folk music, especially sort of more the like pop folk. And I also listen to a lot of Jason Mraz. Basically all I've listened to in 2020 has been Carolyn Tuesday and Jason Mraz. Next up, I have a whole bunch of questions about learning the harp. So people ask me all the time, I want to learn the harp, how should I get started? So first of all, I do really recommend that you find a harp teacher just because harp is probably more difficult than you think it is. One of the best things about harp is that it's very easy to create a beautiful sound right away. So that's really excellent compared to, you know, some other instruments, say oboe or violin. However, the technique can be pretty difficult to figure out on your own, and you just might not be able to see really what your hands are doing compared to, you know, if you're looking at a video the same way that a professional looking at your technique is going to be able to notice. So what I find tends to happen with people who self-teach, the technique, you can get by for quite a while and it works until it doesn't work. And then when you want to start playing something more difficult, your technique that you self-taught can get in the way and then you have to relearn something. So a harp teacher is going to speed up your progress a lot. But I understand that, you know, not everyone has the means to take lessons. So if you do want some educational videos to look at, Learning the Harp with Christy Lynn honestly has, I think, the best harp educational content on YouTube. So I'll link to her channel in the description. On a related note, I had a few questions about how to practice tricky sections, whether it's because they're fast or because they're hands together and their rhythms are different. The answer to both of those is practice slow. What I love to tell my students is slow makes fast. And also, if you can't play it slow, you can't play it fast. So practicing slow and in chunks will get you through pretty much anything you might need to learn. Of course, you know, there might be a technical roadblock, in which case, again, a teacher's gonna help you a lot there. But if you wanna learn more about practicing in chunks, Christy Lynn has a really great video on that as well, so I will leave a link for that in the description. People also ask me, what kind of harp should I buy? What's an affordable harp to buy? So first of all, I would say if you have the option to rent a harp for a few months to kind of see if you like it and you really want to go in for the long haul and buy a harp, definitely do that. So there's two starter harp models that I usually recommend to people, the Harpsichord and the Dusty Strings Ravenna. What I will say about the Harpsichord is that it is constructed well, it's well built, it's going to work properly. But the thing is, they're constructed to be affordable. And so as such, they have a fairly small sound. And what I find is that students who start learning on a harpsichord, after a few months or a year, they kind of hear my harps and go, I want a harp that sounds like that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with learning on a harpsichord. I think they're very good for beginners. They're very good for portability. But I think for many students, if you want to go in and buy a harp, oftentimes it may be worth it to save up a little bit more and go for something a little bit more expensive. So the Dusty Strings Ravenna, it is a really good sounding harp. No one's gonna hear you play that and think, oh, they bought a cheap harp. So I would say that's about the most affordable and really, really nice sounding harp that you're gonna be able to get. That said, if you're buying a harp, some other considerations are you want to buy as many levers as you can afford so that you can play in multiple keys. And if you have the space in your house and the space in your budget, opting for a 34 or 36 string harp might be a good idea because oftentimes after a while, people want a little bit more range, they want a little bit more bass. So if you spend a little bit more on a nice harp with 36 strings and a full set of levers, you might not ever need to buy another harp. People also ask, am I too old to start harp lessons, or do you have any advice for adults wanting to take lessons? The majority of students that I teach harp are adults, actually. I have many adult students who are retired, actually, and just playing music for the first time. So if they can do that, you definitely can too. The key is, as an adult, especially if you're still working, you are gonna have to really consciously make time to practice. But if you practice regularly, you will absolutely make progress. And as an adult, don't expect yourself to suddenly just be able to play flawlessly right after you pick up the instrument. Don't sabotage yourself with negative thinking and just put in the time and you will find you get better and better. I do have one more question specifically about where to buy harps if you're Canadian. So firstly, I would say if there's a Long and McQuaid near you, they rent out harps. And if they don't have one in stock, they can ship one in from another store. So definitely look into that. If you're looking to buy, I definitely would contact West Coast Harps. I'll leave a link to them in the description as well. They're really, really friendly. They're based out of Victoria, and they're really helpful. So I definitely check them out too. And lastly, I have a few questions about future projects. So I've mentioned, definitely on Patreon, I'm not sure where else, but I am thinking about doing an EP. And so some people have asked, what is the EP about? And is it still happening? And yes, I am planning on a Carol and Tuesday EP. I don't have any more information than that right now, but like I said, I've been listening to so much Carol and Tuesday this year. I find the music really hopeful and it really resonates with me, and I definitely want to cover some of it. Are you planning on more collaborations with other instruments in the near future? I don't currently have any more plans for collabs. However, this past year I've done more collabs than in the entire rest of the 7 years I've been on YouTube. So that's been really special and I've really loved it, and I definitely want to do more in the future. And then the last question I have here, do you consider mastering more instruments on a professional level? The answer is no. It's definitely difficult enough to keep my harp skills really sharp, and with chronic pain too, adding more instruments to that, like there's just not time in the day. There's not strength in my body to get that far. I obviously have self-taught a few instruments like ukulele, and I also sing a little bit. I'd like to get better at singing, so like maybe that one. But besides that, I can't really see myself finding the time to really master another instrument unless I'm retired or something like that. And lastly, you can see one of my cats in the background. This is Nora. And then my other black and white cat is Bilbo. I think he's probably sleeping somewhere right now. Thanks everyone so much for your questions. I had a lot of fun answering them. Again, if I didn't answer your question in this video, definitely check out the full live stream. Link for that is in the description. And if you want to come hang out with our community, we do have a Discord server. You know where the link is, in the description. Thanks so much for watching and listening and being here. And I guess here's to the next 50K. See you around.